Hello Algebra 2, we're going to go through our lesson 8.4c samples to prepare for our quiz on lesson 8.4c. So what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite each equation in standard form as a first step, and then we're going to tell whether the graph of that equation is a parabola, and we'll say if that parabola is opening up, down, left, or right, or if it's a circle, or an ellipse. And then if it's an ellipse, we're going to say whether it's an ellipse with a major horizontal or a major vertical axis. All right, let's take a look at our first sample, see what's going on. Sample 1. We were given 12x squared minus 60 equals negative 12y squared. Well, we see both x squareds and y squareds. So that's going to rule out a parabola. Parabolas only have either an x squared or a y squared, and the other variable would not be squared. So in this case, we're going to say, well, then it's got to either be a circle or an ellipse. Let's go ahead and get our x squareds and our y squareds paired together by adding 60 to both sides and then adding 12y squared to both sides so that we can see what we're working with. Well, we have 12x squared plus 12y squared equals 60. So taking a look at this, we have to decide if it's a circle or an ellipse, and because the coefficients are the same, it will be a circle, and we need to keep in mind that a circle is actually just a very special kind of ellipse. However, the equation for a circle, even though it's a special kind of ellipse, takes a little bit different form than an ellipse. So we need to recall that the equation of a circle is x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So I've written that over here. There's our general equation of our circle. And so we need to get it into that form. We're noticing the x squareds and y squareds both have coefficients of 1. So we're going to need to divide by 12, and both of those coefficients then on those x squareds and y squareds will turn into 1. So here we are dividing the entire equation by 12, and we arrive at our final destination, our equation being x squared plus y squared equals 5. This is our radius squared here, 5. So it's a circle. Okay, next one, sample 2. Negative 6y plus x squared is equal to 0 is our given equation, and this time we notice we only have x squared, no y squared. So that tells us immediately that this is going to be a parabola, and because it's a parabola, we're going to need to solve for the squared variable to get that parabola's equation into standard form. So to get x squared all by itself, all we have to do is add 6y to both sides, and then here we are in standard form for our parabola. And remember that depending on whether or not our parabola is a y squared or an x squared parabola, it will either open up left or right or up or down. Remember our song, oh, I wish I were an x squared parabola, then I'd open up or down for sure, yes, it's true. But if I were a y squared parabola, then I'd open left or right instead. Oh, how nice. So remembering our little song to help us remember which way that parabola is going to open up, we're noticing that's the x squared type. And so that means it's going to either open up left, it's going to open up or down. And so we're noticing that the negative 6 here being negative, the coefficient on the y term is negative, that means for this x squared parabola, it's going to open down. If this were a positive 6, then it would open up. And remember, the x squared parabolas always either open up or down. All right, sample 3. So in sample 3, we're given 3x squared plus 5y squared equals 15. We're noticing our x squareds and y squareds are paired together already. We're noticing we have different coefficients on these x squared and y squareds, which rules out a circle, and it certainly is not a parabola because we have both x squareds and y squareds. So that means that it's going to be an ellipse, and so we need to get into standard form for an ellipse. And for an ellipse, remember our standard form will be equal to 1 here. So we're going to need to get this equation written so that we're equal to 1. So here's our equation in standard form. If, in fact, our major axis is horizontal. So we're going to see if we have a bigger number here underneath our x squared compared to our y squared once we divide the entire equation by 15. So when we divide the entire equation by 15 to make this turn into 1, we're going to notice that underneath the x squared, 5 is bigger than what's underneath the y squared, 3. So that means that this is the equation that we need to be thinking about, where the a squared is always the bigger number underneath our x squared or y squared. So in this case, because the a squared is underneath the x squared, this is an ellipse with a major horizontal axis. That means that it is squished top and bottom, and it's made fatter side by side. All right, sample 4. Sample 4, we have negative 7x equals y squared. We only see y squared, no x squared, so we know this time we're working with a parabola, and a parabola in standard form will be solved for the squared variable, so here we are solving for y squared. We actually just need to switch the sides of this equation to get into standard form. So we have to decide whether or not this is going to open up, down, left, or right. And because it's a y squared parabola, it either opens left or right. And because the coefficient on this x term is negative, that means the parabola is going to open left. Sample 5. This will be our last sample. 5x squared plus 4y squared minus 20 is equal to 0. So first we're going to get into standard form by adding 20 to both sides. So we have our x squareds and y squareds paired together. We see this is not a parabola right away because we see both x squared and y squared. And we see our coefficients on our x squared and y squared are different numbers, so that rules out a circle. That means we need to get into standard form for an ellipse now that we know that's what it is. And we need to get equal to 1 here. So let's go ahead and divide the entire equation by 20 to see where our a squared is. So this time when we divide the entire equation by 20, we arrive at x squared over 4 plus y squared over 5 equals 1. We're noticing our bigger number is underneath the y squared. So that means our a squared this time is underneath our y squared. Underneath the x squared is the b squared. The bigger number is always going to be that a squared number. So we have our equation in standard form. We know it's an ellipse. And this time we know that the major axis is the vertical axis because our a squared is underneath the y squared. It's the bigger number. Okay, so that concludes all of our samples for this lesson. So it's time to go ahead and review them, make sure they're in your lesson, and when you're ready, go ahead and pull up the quiz and start working on that.